Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Larry McIntosh, and I'll be your host for the next hour and every Saturday morning from 8 to 9. Thank you so much for tuning in. Happy Easter. I hope you're ready for your Easter dinner with lots of veggies. Let's have a look at what happened this day in history. April 4th, 1939, Glenn Miller records Moonlight Serenade. This became a standard throughout the big band era and beyond. April 4th, 1964, the Beatles hold an unprecedented record of 12 positions on Billboard's top 100 single chart. 12 positions on the Billboard's Hot 100 Singles chart is what I was trying to say there. They included Can't Buy Me Love, I Want to Hold Your Hand, Roll Over Beethoven, and All My Loving. April 4th, 1987, more recent history, Fox Broadcasting made its primetime TV debut with Married with Children, which aired for 11 seasons, followed by The Simpsons, which is the longest-running sitcom and animated series ever. My guest this morning is David Northcott, Executive Director of Winnipeg Harvest. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Life's entertaining, you know. It's really nice to be sitting here with you. It's always nice to chat about veggies, but life is entertaining. It's good. Things are good.
So everybody knows you. You're the face of Winnipeg Harvest. You're out there. You do lots of media. You're at lots of events. But let's talk about you a little bit. Now, you have a family, right? How many kids?
That's the hard side of things. Yeah, I've got 3 daughters. Obviously, a spouse, Kathy, which thank goodness we got a spouse, Kathy, because that's how I got the 3 daughters. It's been really neat. Yeah, it's really fun being a dad, and that was an experience that I think it was a life-changing experience. And my daughters grew up and married, and now I've got grandchildren. I've got 2 granddaughters and a grandson. One's 4 and one's 2 and one's 1 month, 2 months.
Wow.
So that's a whole different, there's a whole different spirit now that takes place, that when you realize that there's something that goes from generation to generation, and that's sort of that divine promise. It's something neat to see a grandchild, and those with grandchildren, you sort of know all that. And I used to say, don't talk about grandchildren again. I've heard this enough. But when it's personal journey, it's a whole different feeling. So it's a neat feeling.
So 3 daughters.
3 daughters.
Now
yeah.
they all moved out of town, right?
My goodness, they scratched their itch and they took off. And Siri, our oldest, went to Vancouver and lived there for almost a decade and fell in love. And 2 children were born, Zoe and Griffin. And they just recently moved back to Winnipeg. They want to raise their kids in the city of Winnipeg. Here's Greater Vancouver area, all the weather and all the wonderful stuff they brag about there, but they get tired of driving forever to get anywhere. They get tired of the cost of everything. They get tired of the whole process going on. And they could hardly wait. They came back. It was really neat.
That's fantastic. Now, we often talk in the province about keeping the kids here, and certainly I want my daughter to stay here too.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need to go out and see what else is in the world. I mean, I've had the advantage of living all over Canada. I know Winnipeg is the place to be. And
it really is.
Manitoba is where my heart is. But you have to go out and find out sometimes. So it's a great story that they came back.
They came back, and I love that. But the other 2, not one of my daughters is in Montreal and has just had this little baby girl. My other daughter is in Edinburgh, Scotland, and that's where we're heading off there shortly to be at her wedding. So that's really neat. But my betting is someday they'll be heading back to Canada and probably to Winnipeg.
And that's what you hope,
it's
at least.
It's a great place to raise family. I love this place.
Absolutely.
And it's a great place to have veggies.
There you go. Nice tie-in.
Everything's good. Pretty good, eh?
That's right.
For Saturday morning, that's not too bad.
So let's talk about Winnipeg Harvest. We know it's a food bank, and one of my things that I talk about every time I see you is I wished it was named differently, because doesn't just serve Winnipeg food banks or soup kitchens. It really helps share food with a lot of the province, right?
It really does. And we've got a really strong relationship with the Manitoba Association Food Banks, of which Winnipeg Harvest is 85-90% of the activity on it, because it's an odd province that way, where most of the activity in Manitoba operates in one urban setting.
Right.
No other province has that distribution model, so we're very, very unique. The challenge is, how do we deal with northern parts of Manitoba? And that's really difficult. There's some great challenges there, but the cost of moving food to and from northern communities is really tough. So we're watching and learning regularly. We're making sure our donor base is strong, which thank goodness for groups like you, Larry, and like Peak of the Market. When we've done different events, we've been able to use your name to say, wait a minute, Peak will match whatever you put on the table today. And that, obviously, that makes a huge difference for us. So the challenge for us is to keep that going. Keep it going, though, in a way that says, let's not forget why we're here. We're supposed to be out of business one day, and we're still trying to do that.
And that's a significant thing. And you've said it often, and I would agree with you, is let's hope one day Winnipeg Harvest isn't necessary, closes its doors, because there isn't that problem anymore.
Absolutely. And we're doing more training than ever before. We're doing more development stuff than ever before. we're taking the bull by the horns. We're trying to move this forward ourselves, and it's working. We've got some success in certain areas. We don't have the scale that we need, but we're proving that we can do things positive.
How many people would you share food with on a monthly basis? I know way too many of them are children.
Way too many children. Still about 48% are children, and we're just over the 50,000 mark. We've been hovering in that mark for a couple of years, a little bit high and below that. But so the good news, it's stable now. It looks like it's stabilized. In the whole province, it's about 60,000. Again, almost half are children. Probably about 6 or 7% are 2 years of age and under, and that's very distressing for us. That you don't want those kids to start life in a food bank or in a food program. That's just not the right thing to do. But if they have to, let's at least get good, healthy food with them, and that part is working well.
I was talking to the Alberta Association of Food Banks on Friday, and they were saying that they've already noticed a spike in food bank use because of the oil prices have gone up. There's been massive layoffs up there. I think there was 14,000 people last month alone lost their job in Alberta, and they're all of a sudden coming to the food bank, which is an unfortunate thing to hear.
Absolutely, and we're very concerned. I mean, we're very tight with the Calgary Food Bank. We've done a lot of things in Nunavut together between Winnipeg and Calgary, and they're really concerned. I mean, they're certainly very well organized, very well disciplined, and they've got a great distribution model, but they've obviously very concerned about how do they sustain this peak if oil prices don't turn around.
And that's one thing about Manitoba. We don't have the peaks and valleys the way other provinces do, certainly Alberta, the boom and bust, as they say. But so, I mean, we have way too many people that need the assistance of a food bank or soup kitchen, but
it's stable.
It's stable.
Great place to raise the kids.
Get back to that again.
Kids. Yeah, we're a stable economy, and it grows and it progresses, but it doesn't have the huge peaks and valleys. You can't. It's hard to maturely move into a community worrying about ups and downs, but we move into this community, and it's just a matter of keeping it going. And it's a great community.
We'll be right back with David Northcott, Executive Director of Winnipeg Harvest, after we take this break for your weather update. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Larry McIntosh. I hope you had an opportunity to see our bright and colorful potato bags at your store. Peak of the Market's new Sesame Street potato and onion bags feature Elmo, Bert, Grover, Oscar, Abby Kadabi, Rosetta, Cookie Monster, Big Bird, and Ernie. 9 different Sesame Street characters in all. Along with the characters, you'll still see the Peak of the Market logo, so you are guaranteed it is grown right here in Manitoba. We're very pleased to partner with Sesame Street on the Eat Brighter program. The Sesame Street Eat Brighter program is all about encouraging children and adults to eat more fruits and vegetables. If you haven't seen your favorite Sesame Street characters on a potato bag in your favorite store, please ask the produce manager. Where are they hiding? Actually, being Easter, maybe instead of looking for eggs, you could look for the Sesame Street characters. That's just a thought. We're back with David Northcott, Executive Director of Winnipeg Harvest. Now, David, I have to say, the very first Sesame Street bags that we had packaged in Manitoba, we took over to Winnipeg Harvest and gave to you guys, the very first bags.
I loved it, and I didn't last till noon. We had a group of kids coming in that day, and they were all over these bags. And we had to tell them there's potatoes inside. Oh, yeah, but look at the picture on these things. It was really neat. It struck a chord. It was brilliant marketing. I thought that was very, very clever.
And we love our relationship with Sesame Street. Who doesn't like Sesame Street? But it was symbolic to us to have the very first bags given to Winnipeg Harvest because we're so associated with yourselves.
We've learned a lot from you over the years, and I think we really appreciate that relationship. Not just where food comes from and respecting food and being able to get potatoes and root crops, et cetera. It's been wonderful. But how you tell the story, and I think that's the power of a lot of things. If you don't tell the story really well, people aren't going to hear about a food bank or vegetables or et cetera. If the story's told well with distinction and integrity, then people get a chance to sort of actively get involved. And I think that's what you want in society, people getting actively involved. So thank you very much for putting those coattails out there, because we've been riding them for a long time now. And we still love our veggies, you know. Still love our veggies.
You are too kind. You are too kind. So we were talking in the first segment, you share with a whole bunch of agencies throughout the province or parts of the province. I think it was over 380 agencies you saw?
Yes, yeah, 380 agencies in the city and about 40, 45 in rural Manitoba. Now, some food programs are very strong and are very well organized and don't need our support at all, but we're very happy to be able to share whatever we can. There's some smaller food programs that just don't have the resources, so we're moving food to them probably on a monthly basis. So we move about just over 2 million pounds of food outside the city of Winnipeg, a lot of which is peak market product, so we're very appreciative of all that. So I know farmers and people donate to us in the city. You got to know that a lot of that does go back out. We move about 13 million pounds of food a year now.
Wow.
To these 50,000, 51,000 people. But we move just over 2 million pounds outside the city. When you consider that, when you look at the food bank activity in Manitoba, 85% of that activity, 88% of that activity, depending on the time of year, is in one city, Winnipeg. That's just the way it is. So that means you can redistribute upwards, 12% is the sort of the ratio. So we try and put way more than that in rural areas than is that fair share ratio. We try and overcompensate because people don't have the resources to be able to gather the way we can. So we want to make sure we share well. So we do that throughout the province, and it's a good province that way. People really care for one another in this province, and it's been our experience.
And our growers, speaking of the market growers, have been involved with Winnipeg Harvest long before I ever joined the company.
Very beginning.
Very beginning, yeah.
Very beginning.
And part of what they like is obviously helping people in the city, but also gets back to the rural areas where a lot of them live. But it's really about helping those less fortunate than ourselves.
That's that spiritual itch that people got. You want to be able to do well in life, but every once in a while you look at somebody else and say, man, I wish I could give them a break, or wish I could do something for that family or that person or that child. And that's that spiritual itch we got a lot of in Manitoba. People like scratching that, and you help them. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
What do you see as the challenge for the food bank in the coming years?
Biggest challenge of all is planning to close because of lack of need. That, I don't know why we can't wrestle some kind of political will to say, we'll join you in the journey, David, to start reducing food bank use by lack of need. I mean, we can close the door and force people to go and talk to government. That doesn't help at all. But how do we genuinely, lovingly close the door because of lack of need, that people got jobs, or they're on a safety net that truly catches them, or they got an education system that they're into the education process, or if they're people with disabilities, there's a disability pension for them. That's adequate. That doesn't let them not use a food bank. Those are pieces we want to have on the table that says, here's our future. So until that happens, I love what I do, and it's wonderful to work with people, but the biggest nugget is how come we're still here, and why can't we reduce the need?
And they're probably, if I asked you the 5 things that need to be done to eliminate the food bank, it's probably not as black and white as that, I would assume.
No, and if it was that black and white, this would have been done 25 years ago on our 5th anniversary. We've been around almost 30 years now. If it was that simple, it would have been done by political parties way before now. It's very complex. The issue isn't just about money. Yes, families need more money, and I think one of the triggers is we can't say, well, it's not about money at all, therefore we're not going to give you any. We, just budget better. But if there was enough dollars on the table, then the other things, education, healthcare, spiritual health, all these other components need to be part of the conversation. And if they're not, then this is just temporary stopgap. So we're not interested. We're interested in the collective whole and becoming better and healthier for everybody.
The Ontario government, I think it was this week, I might be wrong, but they announced they wanted to eliminate homelessness, and they had $387 million, and probably the wrong number, doing this off the top of my head. A huge amount of money to eliminate homelessness. Yeah. That's putting a lot of money towards it, and that will help a lot of people, but can you actually eliminate it totally? Can you eliminate food banks totally? Do you see that
No,
one day?
You can't eliminate it totally because there's a dynamic in the family and there's a dynamic in the community where people come and go, jobs are lost, or addiction issues take place, or problems happen, or abilities and disabilities take place. I mean, all these things are in a dynamic environment. So you're going to get people falling through the gaps and needing some help. Our challenge has been, why has this grown over 30 years and it should have been shrinking by now? I know the economy reshifted itself in 8 and 9, and we saw big jumps of people using food banks. It's come down a little bit now. It's stable now. So I think now we can take a look at, let's look at a different model. Using the arguments we used in the beginning is just get people a job. That doesn't work. Because people did get jobs and they became poor, working poor, and they became casual labor poor, and they had a job though. So we realized it's just not that simple. We need to make sure people get a chance to get on with their lives, get some education training, and get some living wages, but some kind of basic need that can catch them and help them move from there.
In the next half hour, I want to talk a little bit about the training programs you have, because that's incredible. We need to spend a little bit of time on that. We'll be right back with David Northcott, Executive Director of Winnipeg Harvest, after we take this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. I'm Larry McIntosh, and it's time for our recipe segment called Now We're Cooking. You don't need to write this recipe down, as today's recipe of the day at peakmarket.com and in the Winnipeg Free Press. So all the information is on our website, peakmarket.com, or in the Winnipeg Free Press. Today's recipe is baked onions in cheese sauce. Baked onions in cheese sauce. This recipe sounds good. Let's see what's in it. Small cooking onions peeled, butter, flour, salt, milk, cheddar cheese shredded. Bothwell cheese is always good for that. Breadcrumbs, butter melted, and this recipe serves 6. If you're interested in viewing the full recipe, it is in today's Recipe of the Day at peakmarket.com and in the Winnipeg Free Press. You can also get thousands of recipes at your fingertips with Peak of the Market's new recipe app, which is available at all the app stores, and it's absolutely free. We'll be right back with David Northcott, Executive Director of Winnipeg Harvest, after we take this break for your news, sports, and weather. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Larry McIntosh. I read this poem around Christmas time, but I've had many requests for it, so I thought I'd do it again for Easter weekend. In view of tragic events that continue to occur around the world, let's think about the following and count our blessings. If you have food in the refrigerator, clothes on your back, a roof over your head, and a place to sleep, you're richer than 75% of this world. If you have money in the bank, in your wallet, and spare change in a dish someplace, you're among the top 8% of the world's wealthy. If you woke up this morning with more health than illness, you're more blessed than the million who will not survive this week. If you've never experienced the danger of battle, the loneliness of imprisonment, the agony of torture, or the pangs of starvation, you're ahead of 500 million people in the world. If you could read this message, you are more blessed than over 2 billion people in the world who cannot read it all. If you can hold your head up with a smile on your face and are truly thankful, you are blessed because the majority can't, but most do not. Let's count our blessing this Easter weekend. We're back with David Northcott, Executive Director of Winnipeg Harvest. A poem that we read once in a while because it means a lot to me. We talk about the pangs of starvation, and that kind of really comes into the food bank right here in Manitoba.
It's a great poem. Every once in a while, you need that gut check that says, "Oh my God, we are blessed." That's a great poem. I think the challenge is being in a rich country to have people in our communities struggling to be on the other side of that poem, where they're struggling with income and struggling with hunger and poverty. That's a hard bite.
And some people, you said in the last half hour, some people it's addiction issues, it's family issues, hit a bump in the road. There's all different reasons why people have to go to a food bank, but I don't think anybody wants to go to a food bank.
Nobody I've met likes to do it, or nobody I've met ever wants to be on welfare. They don't. I remember a friend of mine, when he turned 65, he was able to go to his social worker and his welfare worker, and he said, "I'm now divorced from you. I can get my full pension plan, and I'm treated like every other citizen in the country. I don't need to deal with you or your programs or you're micromanaging my life." And that's for me was the power of this, that we do treat citizens well that are seniors when they get in a Canada pension plan. There's nobody shaming them or pushing them around or budging them or all that kind of stuff. They get an adequate level of living and they're treated like a citizen. Before that, they're not, and it's really hard. It's really tough being poor in a rich country.
How do people get involved? How do people get food from the food bank if they want to need assistance for whatever reason? How does it work?
They can phone us, and the phone call, there's volunteers that take the phone call, and we'll qualify them a bit and where they are, where they live in the city, etc. And we ask for their health card number. That tells us the age of the children and the size of the family and location, etc. And it's a private number. We put that in our database, and it doesn't go anywhere. We check in with the health department on a regular basis to make sure our database is secure.
Okay.
But from that, it gives us the data about who uses the food bank. We can refer them to a food bank in their neighborhood, one of 360 different programs in the city. Or we can say, if you're in the area and you're hungry now, come down to Winnipeg Harvest. We'll get you a hamper today and set it up so that when you do go home, there's a food bank in your neighborhood, and we'll have a hamper delivered to that food bank for you next week. That's the process we use. The other piece is we try and make sure we can help people and say, well, there's some programs for advocacy programs in your neighborhood as well, or there's a housing person that can help you look for housing. There's somebody here that can help you with budgeting, do your tax returns. We try and move people to those networks in the city as well.
How much food would you give them if they came to you? Is it a whole month's worth of food, or is it?
No, we get them about 5 days worth of groceries.
Okay.
And if they're really in crisis or they've got an infant, we'll provide them with 2 hampers of 5 days. They can come back a second time that month. So up to 10 days maximum they can get, but most of the time it's about a 5-day hamper. This just gets them through the month. Everybody gets some form of income in Canada. Everybody does. Is it enough for everybody? Some people, no, and that's what we do, is we plug the hole by putting food on the table. The challenge is that that we want to make sure it's respectful food, it's healthy food, and it meets sort of as many nutritional guides as possible. Thank goodness for the peak of the market. That we are lifeblood that way. But the challenge we've got is sometimes the marketing system sells product that is not necessarily healthy. So people have a huge appetite. Well, I want this fried this, and I want this and this. So they've got a whole bunch of different styles. We have to be honest with them and say, well, we can give you this 5 days. You can buy your own stuff if you want to, but this is the 5 days. This is the 15 meals we'll give you for you, and then maybe 30 meals if it's 2 people, that kind of thing. So we try and give them sort of fairly simple, healthy food.
And quite often you talk about your top 10 list, and is that based on nutrition, or is it based on?
Based on nutrition and based on what are the basic needs that we just can't get too often.
Okay.
So those are items we specifically need. In any high protein items, usually tuna packed in water, anything to do with mac and cheese that's got for the lower fat stuff, and maybe some whole wheat rice and that all these different or healthy grain rice. All these things that are sort of low in sugar, a bit lower in fats, and lower in salts. The idea is to get the nutritional solid pieces out in a hamper form.
I was out over at Winnipeg Harvest last week for the press conference where you were doing Operation Donation with MPI, and I think it was 41 schools.
41 schools,
okay.
Just amazing.
That collected food, and MPI collected their locations, Canada Safeway and Peak of the Market matched it. That's why we were there. But see these young people understanding, some of their classmates may be going to a food bank.
That was the sobering piece. When we talk with schools all the time, there's always somebody in that school system that's using a food bank. Either their parent or grandparent is, and they're part of that family unit. And you have to be really careful that there's people listening who are actively helping you out, putting food on the table that might have come from a place that they just didn't have enough that day, but they're in it as a school member. You really admire them, but you really realize that there's a pretty thin edge here between those who need and those who don't need, and they might be in the same room you're in. You just sometimes don't know who they are.
And I never really thought about that until some of the kids were talking at the mic, and you think that's very true. It could be a classmate, it could be a neighbor. Things happen for different reasons, and thank goodness there's organizations like Winnipeg Harvest around to help them out get through that part of their lives.
And thank goodness for volunteers. Without the lifeblood of volunteers, many of whom are clients, without their lifeblood, we couldn't do a thing.
We're going to be right back with David Northcott, Executive Director, Winnipeg Harvest. We're going to talk about training. I said that last half hour. We're going to come to that. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. I'm Larry McIntosh. Food and Friends Radio is on TV. Each radio show is filmed and will be posted on Mytoba.ca later today. So if you want to see the TV version of this or previous radio shows, please visit Mytoba.ca. Thanks to 680 CJOB's Nicole, who produces our show, and Riley, who operates the camera, as well as the teachers of the Broadcasting and Media Arts program at TechVoc High School. You can also listen to an audio podcast of Food and Friends at SoundCloud.com and at the iTunes Store. So please just do a search for Food and Friends with Larry at Mytoba.ca or SoundCloud.com or at the iTunes Store, and all the shows will come up for your listening or viewing pleasure. It's very important for you to mention that Food and Friends is only available because of 680 CJOB and its advertisers. So please make sure you tune in right here every Saturday morning at 8 or listen live at cjob.com. We're back with David Northcott, Executive Director of Winnipeg Harvest. Now, top 10 food items needed. I found it in my notes here. You ready? Canned fish and poultry, canned fruits and vegetables, canned stew, chili or brown beans, peanut butter, baby food.
Low-fat peanut butter if you can.
Low-fat, okay. Whole grain pasta, rice, brown, converted, or parboiled, canned spaghetti sauce or tomatoes, cereal, high fiber, non-sugar coated, and canned soup. So that all makes sense, right? They're items they can put in the pantry that you can use.
And they're dry storable. We can get them any time of the year, and they don't need refrigeration or freezing, etc.
So we're talking about, obviously, the food bank as part of what you do in sharing food with food banks and soup kitchens in much of Manitoba. But training is really what interests me, is trying to take it to the next step. So what kind of training do you do there?
When we first started Harvest in the early days, we had no other choice. We had to have volunteers. So we would take volunteers in. Those mostly who used the food bank came in. So we'd say, well, can you answer this phone? We'll show you how to answer the phone. This is how that works. We'll have a fellow who's with one of the construction companies. He came in and showed us how to run a forklift, and there's how you run this forklift. So we slowly, at the very beginning, had no other choice. We didn't have any money. We weren't government funded or anything like that, or United Way funded. So we had to be very creative with whoever came in the door. Can you help? Now, how do we train you, and how do we get you going so you can move things safely and healthy, etc. So from that humble beginning, we're now at a point in time where we train people. We can train people and work with the province to train people as safe food handlers. We can certify them. The province certifies them. We can train them up to certification level. And the province will come in and sort of administer the test and all that kind of great stuff. And they can be certified safe food handlers. That's opened doors for jobs amazingly, including we can also do forklift drivers. We can have them trained as a forklift driver, and that works as well. We're working with a number of retired teachers and training people on computers, on English as a second language, on a number of skill sets they need so that they can get involved in the workforce, and including people that are cleaners. We've had great success with that training by itself. We've been able to place people at Polo Park and a number of retail stores that they're cleaners there.
And what I like about what you're doing, I like everything that you're doing basically, but what I like about you doing is you're helping people out by giving them, sharing some food with them, a little bit of food to help them get through the month. But you're also trying to help them take the next step. And that training, to me, is so important for those who want it. The forklift training is huge. The safe food handling is huge. Those are jobs that are out there that people can get into because they have that basic training.
They're getting jobs at restaurants and retail stores. It really works. We're very, very pleased. One of our fellows got a job just over a year ago, and he's a cleaner at one of the big grocery places in the city. And he's planning this year. He's had to get his passport because he wants to take a 1-week holiday in Mexico because all his other buddies that have been working for a number of years are doing that. So he gets, for the first time ever, he's planning a 1-week vacation next winter in Mexico. And it just, you love it. It just,
wow.
He's on the way. It's just, those are wonderful gifts. And he came back into us and said, this is what I'm doing. And it was just one of those moments of time. It's, my goodness, what a great, great gift to give us to say, here's the next step he's taking.
How can
taking a vacation.
That's not unbelievable. How can our listeners help Winnipeg Harvest?
I think please don't forget us when you do grocery shopping. Make sure you keep having the food flow. But the other piece is help us when it comes to affecting change. Please talk to various elected officials and say, what is your plan? You know what Winnipeg Harvest is doing? Ask the various elected officials, and from all 4 government, federal, provincial, municipal, and First Nations governments, ask them what they're going to do to reduce the demand that Winnipeg Harvest is facing. We're doing the best we can to make sure families eat and that they're not hurt while we wait for political change. But ask the politician what's their plan. That's the best thing we can do. But at the same time, make sure every time you ask them something, make sure you donate to your local food bank or Winnipeg Harvest. We want to make sure people eat. We don't want them to go hungry while we're waiting for that change.
And most grocery stores have a Winnipeg Harvest bin in the front. I don't know if they all do or not, but most seem to.
Do, yeah.
Yeah. And I've had people through Facebook or LinkedIn comment that when a store has a buy one, get one free on, they buy one and give the other one to Harvest. And I always thought that's cool that people are thinking of that when they're in the store.
They are. And the nice thing, a lot of stores are put little flags on the aisleways when they know the stuff, the top 10 food item list, they know that. And they put those on sale, and they put the little flags out there and say, remember that one's Food bank, food bank, food bank. And I love that part. I think that I appreciate what the retailers are doing. Very generous.
And I've often heard you say there's 3 things you're looking for: is money, obviously, because that's what makes happen, food, and time. So maybe explain the 3 different categories.
Yeah, we've you're right. We're trying to close the food bank, and we want to reduce by half the food bank use at a future time. But the key things that we need to get there is food, time, and money. You're right. We need food donated to make sure the hampers get filled up. We need dollars donated so we can move all this product and handle it and store it and do every $1 you give me, I can move $20 worth of groceries. And time. I need somebody's time to help me move that food, to answer that phone, to clean that truck, or to do that interaction, that training with a frontline person. Food, time, money affects change on the planet, not just in Winnipeg Harvest. But we can make things happen together, and that's the magic of Harvest. Is it's not planned to go forever, but it's planned to go until change takes place. Food, time, money. We need you.
And we're going to take a break shortly for our final segment, but I just want to say I'm so happy you could come in on Easter weekend. To me, when I think of holidays, I think of Winnipeg Harvest and all the people you're helping. Easter weekend's a time to reflect, and it's a time to think about those less fortunate and how we can help them out. So I appreciate you coming in. We're going to be right back after this break with David Northcott, Executive Director of Winnipeg Harvest. Welcome back to Food and Friends. Please join me next Saturday, April 11th at 8 a.m. when my guest will be Albert El Tassi, CEO and President of Peerless Garments. Peerless Garments, located right here in Winnipeg, has been a leader in the garment industry for 70 years. My guest today has been David Northcott, Executive Director of Winnipeg Harvest. It's always great to hear what's happening in Winnipeg Harvest and catching up.
It's a love being here. It's nice to be in the presence of greatness, Larry. You just this aura of potatoes and growth and have a Sesame Street there. But you got a heart, and I appreciate the heart and the growers, and well done. You make this, especially at Easter time, it's a great gift to put on the table. Thank you.
Thank you for everything you do for our city and our province, David. You're a leader, no question about it, and appreciate everything that you and your co-workers and all the volunteers do at Winnipeg Harvest to help.
Big thank you to all those co-workers for sure. They're great folks.
Thanks, David, for being on Food and Friends.
Thank you.
Thank you to Nicole Bonnycamp, our show's producer, and Riley Rivard, our camera guy. Happy Easter, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care, and please, don't forget to eat your veggies.